Unable to control her anger after learning that her estranged husband had euthanized her beloved rescue dogs, a British woman stabbed her former partner during a visit to his Norfolk home last summer. 64-year-old registered nurse Claire Bridger recently stood trial for an attempted murder charge resulting from the crime, which took place in July of 2025. During the proceedings, she testified that she struggled to cope with the separation from her husband of 40 years, Keith, and that she had been prescribed medication in an attempt to deal with her new reality. Bridger claimed that when Keith told her he had had their dash hands put down, she went off the deep end. She did not deny stabbing Keith in the chest and abdomen, but insisted that she had suffered from temporary amnesia and therefore did not have a clear recollection of her actions. Keith survived after being treated for life-threatening injuries, but a jury spared Claire from the worst fate and acquitted her of the attempted murder charge while finding her guilty of wounding with intent. She's due back in court for sentencing on March 20th. Number 33. Carnival ride collapse. Over a dozen fairgoers were sent hurtling into the air when a ride collapsed during a festival in India's Madhya Pradesh state early last week. All 14 of the victims were children, and 2 of them reportedly suffered serious injuries after a dragon-shaped swinging ship suddenly gave way and crashed into a nearby wall. The kids could be heard screaming as several of them were thrown from the ride in bystander footage of the terrifying incident. Witnesses rushed over to help the victims, some of whom were seen lying on the ground after taking a hard fall, while others were left hanging perilously from the ride. According to onlookers, the ship appeared overcrowded and dangerously unstable prior to the accident, and it seemed like employees were shirking their duty to perform safety checks. A law enforcement spokesperson echoed similar sentiments, and a dedicated team of investigators has been tasked with getting to the bottom of the incident. Number 32. Arian Eteghaei. In a case that hit the news early last week, a former University of California, Santa Barbara student made one last dash for freedom after being convicted of sexually assaulting multiple women. 23-year-old Arian Eteghaei tried to make a run for it just moments after a jury announced its guilty verdict against him for assaulting 5 female victims and battering a 6th during his freshman year. Footage of the escape attempt appears to show the defendant spewing profanities and trying to flee while being escorted to a secure holding area in handcuffs by court officers. Just moments earlier, Eteghaei's defense attorney had urged the judge to allow him to continue to remain free on bail while awaiting sentencing. The judge had wisely denied the request and ordered the convicted predator into custody as he awaits sentencing, which is scheduled for April 8th. 2 bystanders helped the bailiff wrestle Eteghaei into custody, marking a swift end to his last-ditch effort to avoid accountability for his crimes. Number 31. Phony cops terrorized soccer game. Cameras were rolling as a group of armed gangsters disguised as police officers stormed onto a soccer field in Ecuador and murdered 3 members of a rival criminal organization in plain view of horrified spectators. Newly surfaced footage of the incident, which took place earlier this month, shows the gunman opening fire on a soccer field inside a gated community near the port city of Guayaquil, where a group of men had, until that point, been kicking around a soccer ball. The shooters and other players fled, leaving one of the victims behind to die in the middle of the field, while 2 additional gunshot victims were found in the surrounding area. According to news reports, the suspects gained entry to the community by assaulting its security guards and stealing their weapons. One of the victims, 40-year-old Stalin Rolando Olivero Vargas, was the leader of the local Los Lagartos criminal group, leading to the suspicion that he and the other victims, 33-year-old Jefferson Xavier Salon Olivero and 29-year-old Richard Yosuri Mina Vergara, were murdered by rival gangsters. The killers remain at large, and the investigation is ongoing. Number 30. Misty McDaniel. A Tennessee woman is accused of neglecting her own elderly father nearly to death, leading to her recent arrest in Knox County for aggravated neglect of an elderly or vulnerable adult, resulting in serious bodily injury. According to authorities, 42-year-old Misty McDaniel failed to care for the 74-year-old victim properly over a 6-month period by refusing to give him his diabetes medication, causing his blood sugar to skyrocket to dangerously high levels. She's also accused of being responsible for the bed sores and ulcers that were found on the elderly man's body, which was so extensive that his bone was exposed. The senior citizen was admitted to critical care earlier this month and has since undergone multiple surgeries to remove dying tissue from his wounds. In the meantime, investigators determined that McDaniel, who was his designated caregiver, had failed to seek proper medical care in a timely fashion. Following her arrest at her Knoxville home, McDaniel was booked into the Knox County Jail, where she remains jailed on a $75,000 bond. Number 29. Johnny Jose Rodriguez. A California man has been sentenced to at least 55 years in prison for gunning a woman down in cold blood for no apparent reason and later bragging to police that he had good aim. The punishment against 31-year-old Johnny Jose Rodriguez was handed down last week following his plea earlier this month to second-degree murder for the death of 32-year-old Angela Struzas, who was shot to death at her Indio home in January of 2020. An investigation led to the arrest of Rodriguez along with the victim's 44-year-old roommate, the latter of whom was initially charged with accessory to murder and witness intimidation but later cleared of any wrongdoing. Rodriguez reportedly admitted to the crime during questioning, telling law enforcement officials that he had killed Struzas at the instruction of her roommate, who detectives concluded actually had nothing to do with the murder. The charges against the roommate were dropped and Rodriguez ultimately decided to take responsibility by admitting his actions in court. Number 28. Victoria Webb. 18-year-old Victoria Webb of Boynton Beach, Florida, is facing criminal charges for allegedly attacking a woman who's 6 months pregnant during an incident that took place earlier this month. According to news reports from last week, the victim had just arrived home and was attempting to intervene in a physical altercation between Webb and a juvenile male when the suspect hit her in the face and kicked her in the stomach. Responding officers arrived to find the victim crying and in visible distress. They also interviewed the boy Webb had been seen fighting with, who said that Webb got mad at him and another minor for squirting water at each other. He accused Webb of holding his head down to the point where he struggled to breathe, and he too was noticeably upset by the events that had just occurred within the home. Webb was arrested near the residence and reportedly admitted to her involvement in the attack during questioning. She was subsequently booked into the Palm Beach County Jail on charges of aggravated battery on a pregnant victim and cruelty toward a child with aggravated child abuse, and is currently free on bond as she awaits an upcoming court hearing which is scheduled for March 12th. Number 27. Dayton Milligan. A Wisconsin man slammed into an EMT worker's car with such force that the vehicles looked like they had been fused together, resulting in the death of 34-year-old Meng Q. Authorities say that 22-year-old Dayton Milligan was going over 100 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone while racing his cousin in Milwaukee when he crashed his Chevy Silverado pickup truck into Q's Volkswagen Atlas. Emergency responders arrived to find the vehicle stuck together in a T-bone formation, serving as a likely indicator of who was responsible for the wreck. The evidence was supported by the account of at least one eyewitness who reported seeing a man matching Milligan's description fleeing from the accident scene on foot. While investigating the incident, law enforcement received a tip that a 37-year-old man named Earl Gordon had been seen seeking medical care for an injured person who did not want to go to the hospital. Police soon discovered that Milligan had suffered a deep laceration to his knee, which left the bone exposed, and he was arrested on charges of first-degree reckless homicide, hit and run involving death, and knowingly operating a vehicle while revoked. To make an already alarming incident even more disturbing, records show that Milligan has never had a driver's license and was previously convicted in a deadly hit and run that took place in 2020. He was on community supervision at the time of the more recent wreck and is currently in custody at the Milwaukee County Jail. Number 26. Lloyd Preston Brewer III. In one of several Florida man stories on today's list, a Monroe County businessman is facing decades in prison for fatally shooting a man who was caught urinating on his family's strip mall. 60-year-old Lloyd Preston Brewer III was found guilty by a jury of first-degree murder, which carries a mandatory life sentence without parole last week following a jury trial. The underlying incident, which took place in early 2023, was captured on video, which shows Brewer confronting the victim, 21-year-old Garrett Hughes, who had just relieved himself on the side of the building. While the footage is grainy, Brewer could reportedly be seen reaching into his waistband for his gun He fired 2 shots, one of which struck Hughes in the abdomen, and the victim died from his injuries in a nearby alleyway during a 911 call. Brewer claimed that he had acted in self-defense, but prosecutors refuted this argument, and the jury was also apparently unswayed by the claim. Brewer is due back in court for formal sentencing in late February, but is already aware of the mandatory life term that he faces. Number 25. Angel Franco Merida. A Nevada mother is demanding justice after the man accused of her daughter's death evaded consequences for his actions by way of voluntary deportation. 33-year-old Amber Brown was killed in a hit-and-run in Las Vegas in July of 2025 when she was struck by a vehicle while crossing through an intersection on foot. She was in a designated crosswalk when the suspect, 37-year-old Guatemalan national Angel Franco Merida, sped through a red light and mowed her down. Merida fled the scene but was later arrested on suspicion of reckless driving resulting in death. In the meantime, Brown's mother learned of her daughter's death after checking Amber's cell phone location and seeing that the device was at the local coroner's office. 2 days after his arrest, Merida posted a $50,000 bond and was released from jail. He was taken into custody by ICE agents shortly thereafter and was given permission to leave the United States after he volunteered to return to Guatemala. State authorities issued a warrant for Merida's arrest after he failed to appear for his next court hearing, but he remains at large since he is no longer in the country. If convicted as charged, he would face a prison sentence of 1 to 6 years, but his fate remains unpredictable, and as things currently stand, it seems unlikely that he'll be held accountable for his actions. Number 24. Jayden Brown. A Florida teenager who was busted trying to steal a BMW from a car dealership in Daytona Beach remained uncooperative even after being tased by police officers. According to recent news reports, 18-year-old Jayden Brown went to the dealership with his girlfriend and a friend and attempted to buy a vehicle despite having no money or credit. His girlfriend would later tell police that he had been awake for days and wasn't in the right state of mind. After being told multiple times by employees that he could not purchase a vehicle, Brown reportedly returned to the dealership and tried to take one. He tried unsuccessfully to steal a BMW X7, then attempted to take off in a responding police officer's truck, but his efforts were thwarted by the quick-thinking cop who tased him and prevented the situation from continuing. As he was led away in handcuffs, Brown could be heard bragging that he'd be out of jail by the next day. He no longer appears to be in custody and is due back in court on February 10th for his arraignment. Number 23. Sarah Jean Tavano. In what seems like the latest in a trend of female suspects targeting wealthy men, a Florida woman has landed behind bars in Miami-Dade County for drugging and robbing male victims at their hotel rooms. 39-year-old Sarah Jean Tavano is accused of chatting up a man who was seen sitting alone at a local nightclub before persuading him to take her back to his room at the Intercontinental Hotel for consensual intimacy. The night took a terrifying turn for the victim after consuming a nightcap and suddenly falling violently ill. He fell unconscious and awoke to find both Tavano and his $38,000 Rolex missing, along with $1,500 in cash that had disappeared from his possession. Investigators traced the stolen watch to a pawn shop, but Tavano remained at large until more than a month later when she was seen returning to the nightclub where she had met the first victim. Officers responded to the establishment where they arrested her on suspicion of strong-arm robbery, organized fraud, second-degree grand theft and burglary of an occupied dwelling. Tavano remains in custody as she waits to see a judge. Number 22. Olson Jean. In what could perhaps be likened to a scene from a horror movie, a Florida trucker has been arrested for murder after his dead cousin was found stashed in the cab of his rig. Officers responded to calls from witnesses who described seeing 41-year-old Olson Jean rolling around on the ground and behaving erratically in St. Lucie County while questioning the suspect. Members of law enforcement discovered his abandoned semi-truck nearby. He denied owning the truck, which contained a large amount of blood evidence on the exterior. Inside, police found the body of 32-year-old Wendy Monsión, who had been shot in the back of the head and stuffed into a compartment in the sleeper cabin. While the circumstances leading up to Monsión's murder remain unclear, family members revealed that the victim had agreed to accompany Jean on his runs after the suspect had begun acting paranoid. Jean has been charged with first-degree murder and is currently in custody as the investigation continues. Number 21. Erin Wheeler. A former Teacher of the Year in South Carolina is now facing criminal charges for allegedly punching a child in the forehead in an incident that appears to be unrelated to her job but nevertheless troubling. According to police, 34-year-old special education teacher Erin Wheeler struck the victim last fall then followed them into a nearby restroom and continued to hit them in the head and upper body. While it's unclear exactly where the disturbing confrontation occurred, officials have clarified that it did not take place on school property and that the victim was not one of Wheeler's students. Wheeler was arrested earlier this month, and news sources reported last week that she had been charged with 1 count of unlawful neglect of a child. She's currently free after posting a $2,500 bond and appears to be maintaining her innocence through her attorney, who described his client as a shining figure in the community. Following her arrest, Wheeler was placed on paid leave from her employer, who named her 2025's Teacher of the Year last March. Number 20. Lee Clowder. In what one judge has described as one of the top 10 craziest cases he's dealt with during his time on the bench, an Alabama man has landed back in custody for unrelated charges after initially making news headlines for forcing a woman to marry him in a makeshift ceremony in 2024. Lee Clowder, who was 37 years old at the time, held a woman at gunpoint after approaching her at a convenience store in Mobile County and asking her for a ride home. She said yes, but soon regretted the kind deed when Clowder ordered her to drive to a nearby church where the phony ceremony took place on the outside steps. He then continued to hold the woman against her will and assaulted her while forcing her to drive around. Most of the charges relating to the incident were dropped after the victim failed to appear in court, and Clowder served 4 months in jail for resisting arrest, but is now facing allegations that he set someone's camper on fire during an argument, resulting in charges of arson, criminal mischief, resisting arrest, violating probation, and harming a police animal. He reportedly remains at the Mobile County Jail and is currently awaiting an upcoming court hearing. Number 19. Michael Ryan Burke. A decorated U.S. Marine knew he was dying as he texted his final goodbyes to his family after being shot by a group of teens who targeted him in a Facebook marketplace scam as part of a plot to steal his iPhone. 42-year-old Michael Ryan Burke met with the 18-year-old suspects Kobe Orst, Joseph Crane, and Alexis Bauman, along with a 4th juvenile defendant, at his Columbia, Missouri residence under the belief that one of them wanted to buy his iPhone 15 for just under $600. Alexis Bauman reportedly waited in the car while Crane and the juvenile suspect went inside to steal the phone. She overheard 3 gunshots coming from inside the house, followed by her accomplices running outside. The suspects fled the scene and drove to a Walmart store where they exchanged the phone for cash at an Eco ATM. In the meantime, Burke texted his mother and sister stating that he was dying and loved them. All 4 of the teens have been charged with second-degree murder, first-degree robbery, and armed criminal action, and are being held without bond pending the outcome of the case. Number 18. Issiah Ross. A North Carolina jury is currently deliberating the fate of a man who stands accused of the double murder of 2 teenagers who were found shot to death in 2022 after being reported missing by their families. High school students Lyric Woods and Devin Clark were reportedly killed during a struggle over a gun by 20-year-old Issiah Ross, who is accused of shooting Clark accidentally and then deliberately killing Woods because she was a witness to the crime. During the proceedings thus far, the jury heard testimony from the prosecution's star witness, Christian Sykes, who claimed that Ross bragged about dumping the bodies in a place where they would never be found, but the victims' remains were discovered just hours after their concerned families contacted law enforcement. Furthermore, Sykes claimed that Ross showed zero remorse for his actions, leaving the witness feeling sickened and alarmed by the defendant's seemingly sociopathic conduct. The jury failed to reach a consensus by the end of the day on Friday, and the deliberations are set to continue this week. Number 17. Lance White. A Wisconsin murder defendant claimed that his girlfriend asked him to shoot her in the forehead where she had his name tattooed. 29-year-old Lance Devon White was recently arrested on suspicion of first-degree homicide for the death of 29-year-old Alicia Mashnick, who was found dead in a motel room in Appleton by an employee earlier this month. According to a newly obtained probable cause affidavit, the victim was lying face up in bed with a single gunshot wound to the forehead. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and evidence left behind by the suspect, including his birth certificate and social security card, led to White's arrest in connection with the case. White had been seen leaving the hotel room 3 hours prior to the discovery of Mashnick's body, during which time no one else was seen coming or going from the room. The couple had reportedly been in an on and off rocky relationship for several years and were known to stay in motel rooms Following his arrest, White reportedly admitted to shooting Mashnick, and he's currently in custody as he awaits a court hearing. Number 16. Anthony Green. A New York man's attempt to kill his girlfriend inadvertently led to the death of his neighbor, and he has now been sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. The punishment against 60-year-old Anthony Green came last week following his conviction in December of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted murder and arson. He was found guilty of killing 34-year-old Chereia Allison, who died after Green set fire to the 2-family residence where she lived, next door to the intended target, Lorraine Green. The incident was captured on video, which reportedly showed White exiting the home as it became engulfed in flames. He calmly walked to a nearby convenience store to buy cigarettes, seemingly unfazed by what he had just done, then returned to the crime scene and watched the building burn from across the street. Instead of taking any accountability for his actions, Green has chosen to maintain his innocence and plans to appeal his case. Number 15. James Martin. In what's been described as a formulated plan to kill, an Iowa man stands accused of stabbing his wife to death at their Coralville apartment. News reports from last week state that police responded to the couple's home just outside Iowa City, where they found 41-year-old Amber Martin suffering from stab wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and her husband, 47-year-old James Martin, has since admitted to being responsible for the crime. According to law enforcement, James confessed to retrieving a kitchen knife and ambushing Amber, who worked as a medical laboratory scientist supervisor for the University of Iowa, as she entered the room. Authorities have yet to disclose an alleged motive for the crime, but have announced first-degree murder charges against James, who remains in custody at the Johnson County Jail with bond set at $1 million. Number 14. Alicia Burrow and Chereia McKinley. A 64-year-old Louisiana woman was reportedly neglected so severely by her own daughters that her skin was said to be peeling from her body by the time emergency responders were called to the family's East Baton Rouge home. The suspects, 42-year-old Alicia Burrow and 39-year-old Chereia McKinley, fell under investigation earlier this month after calling for medical assistance for the victim, who was suffering from obvious injuries and evidence of neglect. According to news reports from last week, Burrow and McKinley were the designated caregivers for their mother, who was immobile and incapable of feeding, bathing, or otherwise caring for herself. The extremely dehydrated and ailing victim, who had been wearing a soiled undergarment for several days, was taken to a nearby hospital with multiple injuries, including open sores all over her body. Burrow and McKinley were arrested on suspicion of cruelty to the elderly or infirmed and remain in custody amid the ongoing case. Number 13. Katie Lee. A Michigan mother who claimed to kill her own son out of love has been sentenced to 60 to 90 years in prison. The punishment against 40-year-old Katie Austin Lee came last week following her guilty plea in October to second-degree murder, assaulting or resisting or obstructing a police officer, and torture. She copped to the charges just days before her trial was scheduled to begin and has since taken an apologetic and remorseful tone for her actions. The underlying incident took place in the city of Holland in February of last year, when officers responded to an incident at the family's apartment complex. Upon arriving at the scene, they were met by Lee, who was holding a knife in her hand. She refused to drop the weapon and was taken into custody after being tased. Lee's mentally disabled teenage son, Austin Dean Picard, was found dead inside the apartment with a knife wound to the neck. The suspect claimed that she had agreed to kill Picard at his request, claiming that the boy did not want to turn 18 and become an adult. Regardless of whether or not this is true, the authorities determined that Lee had no lawful right to take her son's life, and she will now pay the price by most likely spending the rest of her life in prison. Number 12. Phillip Mink. Apparently unwilling to move on from the past, an Arkansas man stands accused of harassing his ex-wife and trying to run her over with his vehicle outside a Kroger grocery store in Jonesboro. News reports from last week state that 47-year-old Phillip Blake Mink was initially accused of violating a protective order that his ex had taken out against him. The alleged victim told police that Mink had shown up at her house and tried getting her to come outside before leaving in his pickup truck. Later that day, the same woman flagged an officer down outside a Kroger supermarket while on the phone with Mink, who was reportedly seen in his vehicle nearby shortly thereafter. Officers tried to pull him over, but he allegedly did a U-turn and drove toward the victim at a high rate of speed, striking her vehicle while she sat inside. Fearing for her life, the victim fired a warning shot which did not strike Mink, and the suspect was arrested on suspicion of criminal attempt to commit first-degree murder and first-degree stalking. Mink is currently behind bars at the Craighead County Jail on a $100,000 cash-only bond as he awaits his arraignment, which is scheduled for February 27th. Number 11. Dr. Michael Urban. A Colorado anesthesiologist is facing a manslaughter charge after a patient died during a routine cataract surgery, with prosecutors claiming that he was paying more attention to the music bingo game he was playing with his co-workers than to the ailing man on his operating table. 68-year-old Dr. Michael Urban was assisting with what was supposed to be a 10-minute procedure on 56-year-old Bart Reiter at the Insight Surgery Center in Lone Tree in February of 2023, when staff members failed to notice that the patient's vital signs had become abnormal. According to a lawsuit filed by Reiter's wife, the employees had muted alarms that would have otherwise alerted them to the man's precarious condition, thereby giving them time to correct the issue and perhaps save his life. Urban was the only person in the operating room who could see Reiter's vitals, but he was allegedly too busy keeping score to realize that the patient was in respiratory distress. Reiter died from cardiac arrest, and the case against Urban is ongoing. Number 10. Christina Peterson. An ex-judge who made news headlines for her arrest outside a Georgia nightclub in June of 2024 is suing the city of Atlanta and the arresting officer for alleged misconduct and excessive force. 40-year-old Christina Peterson is representing herself in the recently filed lawsuit, which accuses Atlanta police officer Keith Wadsworth of violently slamming her headfirst into the ground and initiating a malicious prosecution against her. Peterson was initially charged with felony obstruction, but the count has since been reduced to a misdemeanor. While the case against her appears to be ongoing, she argues that the reduction of the charge is indicative of her innocence and that the original allegations against her were trumped up. The lawsuit also states that Officer Wadsworth cannot use qualified immunity to avoid accountability for his alleged wrongdoings, claiming that he violated Peterson's Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. Following Peterson's arrest, the state Supreme Court removed her from the bench for unrelated reasons, citing her flagrant disregard for the law. The outcomes of both the civil and criminal cases remain to be seen. Number 9. Todd Marrs. A routine test drive in a Jeep Wrangler turned into one Ohio car saleswoman's worst nightmare when the customer behind the wheel allegedly deviated from their planned route and kidnapped her. According to newly obtained court records, 51-year-old Todd Marrs had shown up at a dealership in Marysville, roughly 35 miles outside Columbus, and asked to take the vehicle for a spin. The saleswoman became fearful after he went elsewhere other than the agreed-upon route, and she knew something was definitely wrong when the suspect parked outside of a warehouse. She later told police that she told Marrs to return to the dealership, but that he refused and told her to sit there and wait like a good girl. As the woman attempted to contact her co-workers, the suspect grabbed her phone and threw it onto the floor of the Jeep. He then ran several errands, even stopping to pick up a friend along the way before finally dropping the associate back off at her workplace. Marrs was charged with abduction and disrupting public services and is currently free on a $250,000 bond as he awaits his next court hearing, which is scheduled for January 29th. Number 8. Shawn Bolden Jr. A Georgia man who gunned down his ex-girlfriend in front of their infantus, been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole plus 5 years. 33-year-old Shawn Bolden Jr. fired nearly a dozen bullets into the victim, 29-year-old Deanna Ellison, using a 9mm revolver, which he stopped to reload halfway through the crime. The slaying took place at Ellison's Port Wentworth home in early May of 2021, nearly a year after she had entered her relationship with Bolden for slapping her because she had invited her mother over for Mother's Day dinner. Ellison was 3 months pregnant when she broke up with Bolden, and the two had agreed to co-parent their child despite no longer being together, but Bolden was apparently unwilling to accept that. The relationship was over, resulting in the gruesome scene that first responders discovered after an anonymous tipster called 911 to report the shooting. The victim was found dead in a pool of blood with her young child crying and inconsolable nearby, and Bolden was arrested following a high-speed multi-county chase. He reportedly showed no concern for Ellison or their child, and his newly imposed fate comes after he was found guilty at trial in December of last year. Number 7. Mohamed Husien. A suspected carjacker has been killed in a shootout with law enforcement after leading police on a wild multi-county chase that ended in downtown San Jose, California. The pursuit began in Sacramento, where police say 30-year-old Mohamed Husien of Davis violently stole a red Chevy Corvette. He then traveled to the Bay Area, where he reportedly committed multiple armed robberies over a several-day period. Hussein's crime spree escalated on Wednesday with the theft of a green Corvette outside a San Jose auto mall. He drove south to San Benito County, where he stole a third car as police tracked his location using license plate reading technology and a helicopter. The suspect then headed back towards San Jose, firing several gunshots at California Highway Patrol officers and members of other law enforcement agencies along the way. A police chopper captured the final harrowing moments of the chase on video, which appears to show Husien exiting a stolen car near Highway 87 and shooting at police while attempting to flee on foot, injuring one officer in the shoulder. The cops returned fire, and Husien could be seen collapsing onto the ground as officers rushed toward him. An investigation is ongoing and officials have yet to announce an official cause and manner of death. Number 6. Fernando de Carvalho. A Florida man with distinctive facial tattoos is accused of shooting at a man for refusing to give him $1. 28-year-old Fernando de Carvalho, whose collection of ink ironically includes a piece featuring the words "Fast Money," reportedly approached 3 men on a street corner in Miami's Little River neighborhood on Wednesday afternoon and asked one of them for $1. The man said he didn't have $1 and had started to walk away from Carvalho when he suddenly heard a gunshot, according to an arrest report which states that witnesses described the suspect as erratic. Bystanders also reported seeing Carvalho pointed a gun at the man and threatening to shoot him before he pulled the trigger. He was arrested near the crime scene, where responding officers found a spent shell casing, and was booked into the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center in Miami-Dade, where he remains held in lieu of $5,500 bond for aggravated assault and unlawful discharge of a weapon. Number 5. Kevin Johnson. In a disturbing update regarding the death of an ex-football player who fell on misfortune after a successful career in sports, officials have announced that former NFL defensive lineman Kevin Johnson succumbed to blunt force injuries. Johnson, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles during the 1990s, was found deceased at a homeless encampment in Los Angeles on Wednesday. While almost no details were initially offered regarding the nature of the 55-year-old's untimely demise, news reports clarified the following day that the case has been ruled a homicide. An investigation is ongoing. In the meantime, Johnson's friends and family have taken to social media to mourn his tragic passing. Number 4. William Spencer. A dispute between 2 Oklahoma brothers over a video game ended with one of the young men dead and the other behind bars for his murder. Oklahoma City police responded to a reported domestic incident at the crime scene early last week, where they found 25-year-old Nicholas Spencer suffering from a life-threatening stab wound. The 911 call had come from Nicholas's younger brother, 19-year-old William Dawson Spencer, who reportedly admitted to being responsible for the victim's injuries during his conversation with an emergency dispatcher. Nicholas was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital, and William was taken into custody at the scene. During questioning, he once again admitted to causing his brother's mortal wound, resulting in his arrest on a first-degree murder charge. He remains in custody at the Oklahoma County Detention Center, with bonds set at $10 million as he awaits his next court hearing. Number 3. Austin Simmons. In yet another Florida man case, 28-year-old Austin Nicholas Simmons of St. Petersburg is facing up to 5 years behind bars for assaulting a civilian who stopped to check on him after they noticed him passed out at a bus station. The incident took place on Tuesday night of last week, when the Good Samaritan saw Simmons in a seemingly unconscious state and attempted to make sure that he was okay. An arrest report, which identifies Simmons as homeless, states that the suspect awoke in an irate state and charged at the concerned citizen, throwing an open ketchup packet at the victim in the process. He later denied accusations that he tried to hit the unnamed victim, while claiming that he was merely trying to give the ketchup packet to the person. Under these circumstances, a suspect would typically be charged with misdemeanor battery, but because he already had 1 battery conviction under his belt, Simmons was booked into the Pinellas County Jail on a felony-level charge. He was also charged with cocaine possession and remains in custody, with bond set at $5,000. Number 2. Jared James Dicus. A man who murdered and decapitated his newlywed wife has died in prison. According to news reports from last week, 24-year-old Jared James Dicus was recently found deceased in his single-person cell at the Wainwright unit in Houston County, less than 2 years into a 40-year prison term. He had pleaded guilty in 2024 to killing and beheading 21-year-old Angie Diaz, whose body was found at a property in Magnolia that the couple shared with Jared's parents, and was facing an earliest possible parole date of 2043. Dicus and Diaz had married just 4 months prior to the victim's death, despite their friends disapproving of the union due to the volatile nature of their relationship. Diaz was murdered and mutilated with a kitchen knife by Dicus, who was found covered in blood at the crime scene by responding members of law enforcement. Life-saving efforts were undertaken by prison staff after Dicus was found unresponsive, but he was pronounced dead at the scene by emergency responders. Based on reports, it appears as though he engineered his own demise, marking an unceremonious end to a gruesome legacy of horrifying violence. Number 1. Glennie Antonio Little Man McGee. An Alabama drug kingpin has been found guilty on all but one of numerous federal charges for the illicit cocaine and fentanyl trafficking operation he ran out of Mobile. 41-year-old Glennie Antonio Little Man McGee was among 8 defendants who were originally charged in the case, which also includes his wife, Ekanza Dianka Maxey. The couple profited to the tune of millions and used the ill-gotten proceeds funding a conspicuously lavish lifestyle. Their arrest came in 2024 after a young child exited a local residence with a backpack filled with cocaine, triggering a raid on the property. Acting as his own attorney, McGee spent just 22 minutes asserting his innocence last week before the jury deliberated. He was found guilty of continuing criminal enterprise, conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute cocaine and fentanyl, possession of a firearm in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and use of people younger than 18 in drug operations. Ekanza Maxey and her sister, Exavera Diagnes Didi Maxey, were also convicted of several charges. The next step will be for the jury to decide whether McGee and his wife should be required to surrender real estate that they own, which is valued at $400,000.